Hi, it's Dot, and Christmas is just around the corner. In fact, today we just got our little old tree and we're very happy about it. But I started thinking, what does Santa Claus like to have on Christmas Eve while he's busy delivering all those presents? He loves chocolate chip cookies. And today in my low-carb kitchen, we're making a very healthy batch that Santa and you will enjoy. All right, so what makes chocolate chip cookies delicious? Well, I think, obviously the chocolate. There's a whole lot of sugar in it, which obviously sets off my taste buds. But what we're going to do is eliminate a lot of those very unhealthy things. And what we're going to use is I'm using hazelnut flour. You can use almond flour if you prefer, but hazelnut flour tends to have fewer carbs. I am using chocolate, and I'm using just regular baker's chocolate. It is 100% unsweetened, so it is extremely bitter. I'm using 2 eggs. I'm using a sweetener. I'm using Swerve, which tends to be my preferred one. You can use whatever low-carb sweetener you would like. Just adjust the quantities accordingly, obviously. I'm using a little bit of nutmeg, and that gives it the cookie a nice little kick or spice to it, if you will. I'm using baking soda, sugar, not sugar, I'm using salt. And I'm going to put in some chopped up walnuts in it. And you can use softened butter if you like, or ghee. I'm actually using a browned butter. And if you can look at this, I've already browned this butter. I'll show you how to brown it. It has a nice nutty aroma and taste to it, which is just absolutely delicious. And I'm using it softened because that really helps bring out a little bit more of the nutty flavor of the hazelnut, since it tends to be a little bit more of a bland nut, but it has gives the cookie a nice little slight nutty taste to it that you probably wouldn't have before if you didn't use brown butter. And lastly, I'm going to be using some vanilla extract. Again, just help with that flavor. Now, the other thing I like to do with the cookie when it's all done is a nice little thing, because cookies tend to be sweet, but I'm going to add a little savory piece of it, and that's just topping it with a sea salt at the very end when you're about to eat the cookie. It just gives it a nice little, just something, it just makes the cookie go out of this world. So with that, let's go ahead and I'm going to show you how to brown your butter. All right, I've put my butter in the pan, and all you're going to do is let this puppy heat up. The recipe calls for half a cup of butter, so that means normally would mean a stick of butter. True. However, since you're making brown butter, you're going to lose about 2 tablespoons during the cooking process, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So what I've done is instead of using a stick of butter, I'm adding a stick plus 2 tablespoons. That should get you to half a cup. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and we're letting this melt. And when you're making brown butter, what happens, you'll start seeing brown specks at the bottom. And at that point, you're very, very close to having it done. You want to make sure you don't burn the butter. But the specks that fall out of it are essentially the milk proteins that are coming out of the butter. And so that's why you're going to lose a little bit of the butter. And you have to add, instead of doing a stick of butter, you're going to be doing a stick plus 2 tablespoons. So with that, we're already starting to hear it sizzle, or starting to bubble. It's going to get really foamy in just a moment, and I'll show you that. And it's just getting all heated up, which is great, and it's melting right now. I do stir it on occasion, but once I start seeing the brown specks, I stop stirring, because you don't want that stirred up. They just sort of fall to the bottom of the pan, and you don't really want that. I don't want to capture that in the cookie, essentially. So this is what I'm talking about. You're going to start having the butter sizzle a little bit. It was much foamier just about 30 seconds ago. That's clearing up. And so I have this over a medium heat. And what I'm watching for is just to make sure that it doesn't start to burn. And then I'll show you what the specks start looking like when they start forming. Okay, at a certain point, I stop using the spoon because I don't want to disturb the bottom. But if you can see the brown specks that are in there, the dark brown, that means the butter is almost done. It has a nice aroma to it, and I'm actually probably going to start taking it off the heat in just a few minutes. But again, what I do here is I just start swirling it around. You can see the deep color that it's starting to form, a nice auburn or brownish color. And that means right now I'm going to actually take it off heat, and then I'm going to pour off the butter and make sure I don't get the brown specks in there. All right, so now what I'm going to do is go ahead and start cutting up my chocolate. Now, if you'd like, you can use completely 100% unsweetened chocolate chips. They do make them. A good place that has them is, for example, King Arthur's Flour. You can order them online. It's a nice, wonderful baking shop that's out of Vermont. And if you ever have a chance to go up in that neck of the woods and can visit them, absolutely do it. You'll just go out of your mind. It's a wonderful place. But you can get them there. You can buy unsweetened chocolate chips online, through Amazon even. Grocery stores, a little harder to find them there. So you can usually find, I use just simple Baker's chocolate. It's the brand that's in the grocery stores. All I'm going to do, you want 3 ounces of chocolate, is I'm just going to cut with my knife, just cut the chocolate. And how big the chips you want is really up to you. I'm using a couple of, at least 2 cups, 2.5 cups of hazelnut flour. So you do want the chocolate to sort of spread a little bit further than just a cookie. So I just chop them this way to make it as easy as possible. And then I'm just gonna go and turn my knife and chop again. Now we're gonna start mixing all of our dry ingredients together other than the chips and the walnuts. So I'm gonna go ahead and put in my hazelnut flour. I'm going to put in my sweetener, nutmeg, baking soda, bam, and a little bit of salt. And I'm just going to whisk it all together. All right, I've mixed my dry ingredients. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to beat the eggs, but I'm going to add a tablespoon of the vanilla extract to it. And I'm just going to go ahead and beat the eggs and the vanilla extract together. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna add the eggs mixture to my dry ingredients. Make sure I get everything in there. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and add my brown butter, my softened brown butter. Now, the brown butter I made on the stove to show you, I'm gonna just put that in the fridge. I can make a lovely sauce with that, which is what I intend to do. With the brown butter, you can use it right off the stove if you choose to. You just got to make sure that you add it to the dry ingredients first to take that heat off so your eggs don't cook when you put them in here. All right, I have my mixture all mixed. I'm going to go ahead and add in my walnuts and my chocolate, and I'm just going to mix everything together. Make sure the walnuts and chocolate are mixed throughout. All right, my oven is heated up to 350, so it's perfect cookie temperature. I've got my baking tray here, and if you can find these little individual sheet parchment papers, absolutely recommend them. Reynolds makes them. They just fit right into your pan perfectly. So, and I use these because it just makes for easier cleanup. I just throw those out and the pan is good to go. But what I'm going to do, it's about a tablespoon roughly per cookie. So what I'm going to do is just go dip in here and make sure I've got my cookie. I'm going to get my knife out, my trusty knife. The batter should make, see, it just plops right up. The batter should make about 24 to 30 cookies, depending on how heaping you are with your batter when you're putting them out on the tray. I just like to make sure it's not too much on here. I like to be a little reasonable. Like I said, I'm only going to make 6 of these. So I'm going to get the cookies out here, and I'm going to show you how you can store your batter in the freezer, and so you can actually at that point make slice and bake cookies. Right now, before these go in the oven, these cookies are not going to spread like traditional cookies because you're using nuts as your flour. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and press down slightly. I don't want them completely flat, but this is pretty much the size they're going to be. So it's about 1/4 inch thick, if you will. So I'm just pressing them lightly. Oop, I ran into a couple of nuts there. And you can also shape the cookie this way too. So if you want it a little more round, you can do that however you like. But, you know, about 1/4 inch thick. You don't want to press them completely flat. All right, what I'm going to do, I've already have some plastic wrap laid down on my workspace. And I'm just going to go ahead and take out all of my batter. Just put it in here. And whoops, got a little bit there. Get this guy together. And all I'm going to do is quickly, I'm going to work with my hands. I'm going to just start shaping it to the size log that you want. Or you can put it into 2 separate pieces if you like. You don't want to, you just want to be careful that you work fast because you don't want that, you know, you're working with fat in here too. So you're just sort of putting it into a log. And actually what I'm going to do now, it's sort of shaped the way I want it. I'm going to wash my hands, I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to roll it a little bit more in sort of more of a formal log shape. what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some freezer paper, and I'm just going to wrap this up in freezer paper. And the goal is you want to try, because it's moist, you want to try to take out as much air as possible before you do that. So I just use a typical freezer paper. This is the same thing I put my meat in when I put it in the freezer. And I'm just going to tape it out with masking tape. I'll write a little date on it. And so then I know when I made the cookies. They'll stay in the freezer for a couple of months, and they'll still be good when you slice them up and toss them in the oven. All right, they're out of the oven. They spread just a little bit, which is perfect. What I'm doing now is I'm putting them, I'm going to take that glove off, I'm going to put them on a wire rack to let them cool so they can cool all the way, including underneath. All right, the cookies are nice and cool, and I'm going to do something that's going to make them a little more savory. It's up to you. You don't have to do this. I'm just going to take a little bit of sea salt, and I'm going to do this one. I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of sea salt on here. And again, how much you want to use, or if you want to use it, it's up to you. But it gives it a nice savory taste to it when you bite into it. I just had a big old walnut with that. But the salt kicks in sort of at the tail end, but it has a nice little hint of the spice of the nutmeg in there. It tastes really good. It's not overly sweet, which I like. I don't like very sweet things anymore, so that's really important to me. But it has a nice taste to it. It's how long you cook it depends on whether it's a little more crumbly or sort of not really crunchy, but crumbly to you. You can make it a little bit softer. Again, that's up to you. This one I let it go a little bit longer, so I wanted a little more of a firm cookie than a soft cookie. But soft cookie will probably happen when we're on Christmas Eve. But anyway, you don't want to get carried away with these. This is really just sort of a nice little dessert, if you will. One cookie, maybe two at the most. You don't want to go overboard because you're also eating, when you think about it, the flour is made out of actual nuts. And so it's a whole lot of nuts that you're eating. If you eat too many of them, you're basically going to stop your weight loss, or you can even start gaining a little bit too. So you really want to be careful with that. And you also can start bloating a little bit too much with too much nuts. So with that, go ahead and give it a try. If you're new to the channel, go ahead, hit like, subscribe. And if you want to get notifications on when my videos come out, just in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a little bell. Just go ahead and click that and you'll get notifications through email. And until next time, I'll see you.